Recording.
Thank you. Welcome everyone to the Centerville City Council meeting of January 19, 2021, being held remote. So we apologize, we're just a few minutes late, but we were having a very good discussion about some of the needs within the city in relation to our cemetery. First thing we'll do before I read the determination is make sure that we're ready to go. I'll do a roll call with Councilman Ince.
Present.
Councilwoman Ivy.
Present.
Councilman McEwen.
Present.
Councilwoman Meekum.
Present.
And Councilwoman Fillmore. Thank you. All five are present. Let that be known. I will read the declaration. In accordance with Utah Code 52-4-2074 of the Utah Open and Public Meeting Act, I have determined that conducting an electronic meeting of the Centerville City Council in an anchor location presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present at the anchor location. This determination is based on the facts and circumstances surrounding the COVID-19 pandemic. Considering the continued number of COVID-19 case counts in Utah, meeting in an anchor location presents substantial risk to the health and safety of those in attendance because physical distancing measures may be difficult to maintain at City Hall. Thank you. All right. Let's start off with a prayer thought from Councilman Ince.
Sorry, I was muted. Our Father which art in heaven, we bow our heads before thee at the commencement of this Centerville City Council meeting and give thanks for the blessings that we enjoy to live in this country and in this state and in this city. We pray, Father, that thy hand might be visible in our lives. Pray that we might have cooperative thoughts and work together this evening to come up with solutions which will benefit the majority of our citizens. We pray, Father, for first responders and give thanks for them, for the blessings of peace and security that we enjoy. And say these things in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Councilman. Next thing is Pledge of Allegiance. I will stand and welcome you to stand with me, and I'll say the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next item on our agenda is the open session. This is where members of the community or anyone can join in on anything that may be on their mind. Encourage you to keep your comments to 2 minutes. And if you do respond, state your name and where you are from. You can see on the screen how to get into that by dialing in, or if you're on Zoom, looking to raise your hand, or just chiming out if you don't know what to do, and I'll welcome you in. So that open session is now open. I'll look for hands. I don't have any hands. I don't have anybody telling me that anyone's calling in. So we will close that open session and move on to the first item of business. Going to change the agenda just a little bit because we have our police chief with us, and we're looking forward to this part of our agenda. We're going to go to the police officers and internal promotions and retirement. And Chief, we're excited to have you present several members of the police department who were promoted or advanced in 2020. And we look forward to telling us who those are, and also the taking of oath of office and oath of honor. So, Chief?
Thank you, Mayor. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. Do you have the video on? Okay. It's an honor for me to thank you.
Just a sec. We need to get Chief back. He's muted. Just a sec, Chief. You're muted.
Oh, someone muted me.
Now you're back.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. So thank you, Mayor, City Council, for your support. For some reason, I guess I'm not coming up on video. I don't know why that is. Do you have the video checked?
We can see you on video.
Oh, can you? Okay. So we do have several of our department members here with us today, and a couple of new members of the department that I wanted to present to the council. And first off, I want to recognize our members of our department through this last year, 2020, who've received some promotions. I wanted to share with you some of the promotions that have been happening this past year in 2020. So in May 3rd, 2020, Jeremy Brown was promoted. He was a detective master officer, and he was promoted to sergeant in May. David Boucher was promoted to master officer in November of last year. Troy Cash was promoted to a police officer 2 from a police officer 1 in November also last year. Sean McWilliams, which is here today with his son, was also promoted to a police officer 3. And then Mark Taggart was also promoted in January of last year to master officer. And we're going to be talking a little bit more about Mark Taggart here in a few minutes with another promotion. He also made the distinction of qualifying for Detective 2 during 2020. These individuals showed a lot of effort and experience and know-how in order to receive these promotions. We have pending promotions that will occur this coming Sunday, basically 1 minute after midnight. We will have some promotion. Now, this is as a result of the retirement of Lieutenant Zan Robinson, who his last day will be on the 28th of this month. And so we've had to do a lot of, it's created a ripple effect that still continues to today. We still need to decide on who's going to be a detective. But we are, after a promotional process, we have decided that Alan Ackerson will be the next lieutenant. So he will be the second in command. He'll be my right-hand man that I'll be working with on a day-to-day basis. And he will also be presenting to you folks during council meetings and so forth. Alan was hired on August 1st, 2004. And I note that I recall Alan when I was teaching at Post, Peace Officer Standard and Training, in the back of the room of one of the portable classrooms there at Post. And I remember him sitting back there and interacting with them. And so when his application came through, I remembered him, and it was great to get him on board. He was promoted to sergeant on January 20th, 2013, and he has worked in patrol and in investigations. Mark Taggart is being promoted to sergeant. Again, that will take place this coming Sunday, just after midnight. He was hired September 30th, 2012, and he has worked patrol and investigations. He is homegrown from Centerville, and has been just a fantastic officer and detective here with the department. So what I would like to do is I would like to have these two individuals come forward up here by the flag, and with anyone that they might have brought with them. Do you want to bring your wife up there, Mark, that would be awesome. So again, I wanted to present these two fine people to the council and recognize them for their service and let you know that they will be serving in these additional capacities. We don't do a swearing in for them, but I just wanted to present them to you for your information. So thank you both. I would like to now invite Adam Calder, Dalton Groen, and Louisa McDonald to come forward here. These are three recent hires that we have made within the police department. We'll first start with Dalton. So if you guys want to just move over this way a little bit, Louisa. And Adam, there you go. We'll start with Dalton over here. Dalton was hired by Centerville Police on October 26, 2020. We received so many great recommendations on behalf of Dalton that we decided it was worth sending him through both the Special Function Officer and Law Enforcement Officer sections of the Police Academy. Historically, within the last many years, we have always required that someone already be certified before we do a hiring. But due to recent pressures in law enforcement and a need for quality officers, we have opened it up to people who are interested in law enforcement. We give preference to those who have already been certified by post, but when we find a candidate that we feel would be exceptional, we are willing to send them through the academy. And that was the case with Dalton. Dalton completed the SFO, which is Special Function Officer portion of the academy. He started right after we hired him, and he completed that in December and started into field training with Master Officer David Boucher, who just walked in. I just saw him a second ago. So he was doing field training. Dalton is now back in the academy in the law enforcement officer portion of the academy and will complete post-training around the 1st of March. Dalton grew up in Bountiful and went to Viewmont High School. He served a 2-year LDS mission to Argentina from 2014 to 2016, and he speaks Spanish. Shortly after returning from the mission, Dalton married his high school girlfriend, Zoe, who had also just recently returned from an LDS mission as well. Dalton's mother explained during our background investigation that Dalton does not lose his temper. He is always calm and collected. She said that during Dalton's high school soccer games, the coach would make sure Dalton was assigned to guard opposing team members who would lose their cool and be combative because they knew Dalton would remain calm, which is the type of person we need. Dalton considered going into medical practice and began working on medical training after coming home from Argentina. Dalton became an emergency medical technician advanced and began working for Gold Cross Ambulance. Dalton has had a lifetime goal, though, of becoming a police officer and was torn between the medical field and law enforcement. And obviously he has decided on the latter, which we are grateful for. While working at Gold Cross, Dalton excelled. A former supervisor at Gold Cross described Dalton as extremely smart and a hard worker who gets along with everyone. They were very sorry to see Dalton leave, but knew that becoming a police officer was something he really wanted to do. Dalton has a twin brother and currently lives in Centerville. He is very active in his neighborhood and church community. Dalton enjoys doing activities outdoors such as hiking, fishing, and hunting. He especially enjoys working on his Jeep and taking it on advanced off-road trails. Dalton is married, has one son, and loves spending time with his family doing activities. We have his wife here, and thank you for being here, Zoe. You must have found a babysitter for the night. Next, I want to introduce Adam Calder. Adam Calder was hired by Centerville Police on November 1st, 2020, and immediately started training in the Police Academy for his LEL certification. So this is another example of the department hiring someone who hasn't fully completed the academy. He had already gone through the LEO and BCO, which is Basic Correction Officer Training. And we felt that he was outstanding, and we needed to make sure that we captured him for our department. And we were willing to send him through the remainder of the academy, which he finished up and is now on field training. Adam Calder grew up in Hooper and went to Fremont High School, where he played football, water polo, and was on both wrestling and swim teams. Adam met his wife Rachel in high school, where he was one grade behind her. Adam started pursuing education towards mechanical engineering, but decided this was not something he wanted to do and changed his focus towards law enforcement. After high school, Adam worked as a diesel mechanic, salesman, and as a correctional officer at Weaver County Jail. Adam states that working in the jail with inmates taught him how to interact with all sorts of people with different backgrounds and to disregard biases while treating everyone with respect. He also learned many gang signs and other behaviors that became useful working the road as a patrol officer. Would you agree?
No, there's no
All right, let's see, where was I? After high school, Adam worked as I read that. Adam's father is a former Utah Highway Patrolman and investigator for the U.S. Air Force. He currently works for the Veterans Administration as an investigator, so this type of work runs through Adam's veins. Adam's wife describes him as a very loving and caring father to their children and someone who loves helping people. Adam's mother describes him as extremely smart and someone who believes in law and order. She said he is honest as the day is long. His father also had many good things to say about him as well. Everyone we spoke to said he will make a great police officer. Adam and Rachel have been married for 5 years. They live in West Haven and have 2 sons. We have really enjoyed Adam working here since he started the field training program. He is quick with humor and wit. Adam is about halfway through his field training and has been assigned to Officer Sean McWilliams as his primary trainer. And next is Louisa McDonald. I think most of you are familiar with Louisa. She's been a crossing guard here for many years and worked for the city also doing the meter reading. She was born and raised in Bountiful. She's lived here in Centerville for 22 years. One of the things that I found with Louisa is that she is very dedicated to service here in the community. She knows the community, and I'm finding that she's just a fantastic asset for what I need her to do. She's married to Ward McDonald, has been married for 24 years. That's probably worth mentioning, right, Ward? Yeah, 24 years. Have 4 children and 1 grandson. Currently a sophomore at BYU, Idaho, majoring in applied business management. Enjoys being with family, cooking, outdoors, and playing volleyball. And she says that she has enjoyed working here. So we'll go ahead and dismiss Louisa. And I want to do the oath of honor at this time with the officers that are here. So officers, if you would raise the 2 new officers, you would raise your right arm and repeat after me. On my honor, I will never betray my integrity,
I will never betray my integrity,
my character, or the public trust.
my character, or the public trust.
I will always have the courage to hold myself and others accountable
I will always have the courage to hold myself and others accountable
for our actions.
for our actions.
I will always maintain the highest
I will always maintain the highest
ethical standards and uphold the values of my community
ethical standards and uphold the values of my community
and the agency I serve.
and the agency I serve.
Thank you. These 2 have already been sworn in as officers, so they have taken the oath that they have to take under law. So I decided that we didn't need to do that again, but wanted to do this oath of honor. And now I would like to invite Rachel and Zoe up to pin the badges on their spouses. So come on up, Zoe and Rachel. Okay, I got that.
It's a sticky
It is a sticky one. There you go. All right. Thank you so much. We're very excited about these two officers, and Philip, they're going to do just a fantastic job. So thank you guys. You can go ahead.
Thank you, sir.
Lieutenant Robinson and Susan. So Zan has been my right-hand man for the last several years, working out as a lieutenant. I was his patrol sergeant when he started. He started in April of 2001. And so I worked in the trenches with Zan for many years. I used to tell people that I wish I could clone Zan and just have a whole bunch of them. I've always just had great respect for Zan and the person that he is and how he conducts himself. It's been fun to watch him just grow and develop himself throughout the many years that he's been here. And of course, his wife, Susan, and for putting up with Zan and supporting him through a career in law enforcement. Zan has been there with me at the worst of my times and the best of my times throughout my career, and I appreciate him just immensely. He's done a fantastic job as lieutenant and has just really dug in and just been great. He worked in patrol before becoming a sergeant. He's probably most noted for his work in canine. Did you have two dogs before Sophie?
CASA for about a year.
Oh, that's right. You started out with CASA. So two drug detection dogs, and then Sophie, our most recent hound dog, which he was instrumental in us acquiring and developing. So we're very happy about that as well. Before coming to us, he spent 2 years working in the prison as a correctional officer. He was also 3 years with Davis County in the jail as a correctional officer. And during some of that overlap time, he worked 3 years as a reserve officer for Ogden Police Department and for Farmington Police Department. So he had a fair amount of experience coming into this job here at Centerville. He's right about 25 years of service right now. And as mentioned earlier, he is retiring. His last day of service here for Centerville City will be the 28th of this month. So a big hand and a big thank you for Zan. Mr. Mayor, thank you so much. I think that's all I've got. Sorry, I probably took a little more time, but I appreciate everybody and appreciate your support.
Thank you, Chief. And you can take all the time you want. And I wish that we could be in person to shake all these fine officers' hands. I think many of us have had an opportunity to meet some of our new officers, and of course, we all know Zan very well. And congratulations on all the advancements and promotions as well. So very, very well done, Chief, and thank you, officers. All right, Council, let's go back then to item number 1. This is a municipal code amendment, targeted residential picketing that we had asked in our council meeting 2 weeks ago. Lisa to put together a little draft document for us to discuss. So I don't know whether Brent or Lisa, you guys want to give us any thought processes you went through as you pulled that together. That would be great if you would.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. So Lisa's kind of looking at me. I know she is saying, hey, can you kick it off and then hand it off to me? So appreciate the mayor for yes, the introduction. So as staff, we were directed to look into residential picketing. Some of our concerns were, of course, is this constitutional? And looking into if there's any cases regarding this. Also looking into just any other research, what other cities have done anything like this, particularly here in Utah. And so Lisa had taken on the bulk of that research, and I'm going to pass it over to her to introduce or let you know what her findings were as we were conducting this research.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Yes, as directed, we've prepared a proposed targeted residential picketing ordinance for your consideration. A number of cities around the state have adopted this type of ordinance. When it was first brought up, I did have some concerns about free speech rights that are certainly recognized in our country. But doing some research, the United States Supreme Court has actually upheld municipal ordinances that are narrowly tailored, restricting protesters from protesting immediately outside a person's home. And it's basically a balancing issue of, balancing someone's right to feel safe in their own home with the right to free speech and assembly. So in looking at this, that US Supreme Court case, the Frisbee case, was in 1988, and many ordinances across the country have been drafted, based upon that case. I did not want to get too pioneering with our ordinance, so I looked at the Salt Lake City ordinance, the Ogden or the Orem City ordinance that was recently drafted due to where Governor Herbert lives, as well as Salt Lake County ordinances and a couple others. And what I found is they're all very similar because we don't want to get creative. We want to stick with what's been tested. And so with all of these ordinances that I looked at, they did have the 100-foot restriction from the property line of the dwelling of the person that the protesters are targeting. So your protest has to be at least 100 feet away from the property line. There were some cases in other states that found, they said 100 feet from the dwelling, but those are problematic because now you have to measure where the dwelling is. And, it's just much easier to measure from the property line because we all can usually see where that is with a little brass monument in the curb. So I do understand that the 100-foot buffer does have a burden on some neighboring property owners. And this was even the case in Orem where I believe, the neighbors had to endure the protesting. But the idea is that for the person that's being targeted to feel safe and obviously to be able to get in and out of their driveway and take their kids to school and that type of thing. So I think this strikes a good balance between these competing interests of residential privacy and First Amendment. So I think I'm comfortable with the ordinance as drafted. Obviously, there are some political issues involved in that, but that's certainly for the council. So we're presenting this as requested. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Council have any questions for her?
Nope. Thanks for doing the research. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. I thought it was interesting. It was an interesting project.
So
Well,
Lisa, I have a
what
couple of questions if council doesn't.
I do. What protection is there for the neighbors who are potentially substantially impacted?
So just remember that people do have a free speech right to protest on a sidewalk. So actually, people could walk up and down the sidewalk of a street and do that. And so I think that that's the compromise that we have to make. Obviously, there could be some disorderly conduct, or if they go onto the private property, there might be some issues there. But this is my recommendation, and that's the compromise, is knowing that some of the neighbors might have to endure some picketing for a little while. But I like it much better. I have seen some ordinances where they say, because the Frisbee case, the US Supreme Court actually said, you just can't stop in front of the home. You can walk along the sidewalk and you need to go around the block or, and so there are some ordinances around the country that just say you can't stop in front of the house. But again, in Utah, most of the communities and cities have the 100-foot buffer. And I believe that it's narrowly tailored and much more legally sustainable and also enforceable. So we know where that is.
And so then with that 100-foot buffer, it's assumed that they can stand still and not be having to continue circulation.
Yes.
And the 100-foot buffer is only for the targeted property.
That's correct. The person, if it's a person living in that dwelling or that residential unit.
And is there a time limit at all on the amount of time that they can camp out there? And so otherwise what they could do free speech wise is just be at the property line instead of 100 foot away from the property line and also camp out. Is that correct?
Can you repeat your question? Meaning, could they stand without this ordinance? Could they stand right in front of the house? Yes.
No, not right in front of the house. It's still, I mean, if they cross the property line other than the sidewalk, then it could be trespassing.
Yes,
right?
If they go on private property, you're only allowed. Yes.
And so without this ordinance, they could congregate at the property line, just unlimited and stay for however long, just like they're able to do to the neighbors of the targeted property.
Yes.
Yeah. For me, I'd like to maybe hear more from the council. I'm not quite sure I understand the point and intention of 100 feet, where it's affecting the neighbors at the same amount that it would be affecting, I'm not quite seeing the benefit as to placing a restriction in the targeted way that then doesn't apply to the neighboring properties. I mean, there's still your own property that you can protect. What does the 100 feet into the one specific property benefit? What benefit?
I think it's a fair question. I wanted to defer to the chief to see what his viewpoint is on that, since in practice, this would be a ordinance on the book to be used as a law enforcement tool. I'd like to hear what his thoughts are on that.
Yeah, enforceability as well.
Chief, are you there? Are you talking to your other officers? I don't know if he's here or not. Chief? Maybe we'll get him in a little bit. My questions were, I was picturing the layout of Centerville and our neighborhoods. And maybe I'm just kind of short-sighted, but I'm picturing most of our homes in our neighborhood, and most of our council members here, other than one, if they picketed and came on my property, then they're trespassing if I don't want them there. If they stay on the street and they're delaying traffic, then they're also breaking the law as well too. So I just don't see how this is doing this is accomplishing anything that's already enforceable from getting them off the street or them not being on the property. And and this is why I'd like to have the chief here as well too, if this is enforceable, I don't like making a law that we're not going to enforce.
Well, when I asked for this particular ordinance to be looked at, I was actually using a compare and contrast between, as I mentioned last time, Dr. Angela Dunn's home and Dr. Miner's home. And when you look at the requisite photos that go along with them, you'll see a photo in the Ogden Daily Herald, which has, or Daily Herald, that has protesters standing right in front of Dr. Miner's home. Now, I guess to Tammy's point, well, does that inconvenience the person next to you? Yeah, it sure does. And then I'm interested to see what the chief's thoughts are on that if the neighbor complains. But the concept here is that in maintaining decorum of both in free speech and that counterbalanced right of to feel safe in your own home, I don't think anyone should be subjected to protesters standing out there screaming at them with placards and things at their home. That is my refuge. That is your refuge, and that should be respected. There are a time, place, and manner for protests, and that's not the time, place, or manner that should be taking place. And that's why I appreciate Lisa doing all the work. When I first brought this project up, there was a big sigh followed by I'll go look into it. And I don't think Lisa would have brought us something that would not be, as you well know, legally sustainable and supportable. So I feel that the language is going to be sufficient, but it comes down to the mechanics of how does it actually work. So I've stalled long enough for the chief to be able to help us understand that.
Well, thank you. That was a nice segue. Sorry, I was still kind of socializing there, so I missed some of the discussion that happened just before this. But from what I've known of reviewed of the ordinance, yeah, there's always going to be an issue of how practical it is to enforce something like this. I think where you're looking at enforcement of an ordinance such as this one, they're going to have to clearly be in violation of the ordinance. So when we're talking 100 feet or whatever the case may be, it's going to have to be quite obvious that the people are in violation. So from a standpoint of enforcement, it would probably have to be err on the side of caution or err on the side of, make sure that they are actually in violation of the ordinance. Now, having said that, I do support such an ordinance. I think that just as Councilman McEwen states, your home is your castle, it's your refuge, and there's a sacred aspect to it, and have people show up at your house to demonstrate. I mean, there's a reason why people do that, because it's extra impactful to the person and it disrupts their life. And to me, that's something that is worthy of protecting as far as the person's privacy rights at their home. So I think that there's some good justification for it. If it's constitutional, obviously that's a hurdle that needs to be met, but apparently from the research, it is constitutional. And I have no problem at all. In fact, I would prefer having such an ordinance in place as a tool that we can use to try to address some situations if they arise.
So if I may, Chief, I probably should know more about this. When you start talking about where they can protest, are they allowed in the street?
Well, they would be, so it goes to, are they obstructing traffic? If they're in a place where the normal public has access to and right to without violating another law, then that would be where they could be. If they plug the street and they're blocking traffic, then that is obstructing traffic and violating other laws. Hopefully that answers your question.
I didn't know. So we have, the sidewalk has been mentioned. In addition to the sidewalk, most of our city has park strips. I presume that is considered city property. There's also an easement that, depending on where you are, is 8, 10, or 12 feet from the sidewalk into the house. Do they have access to that space?
As an enforcement, I would draw the line at the edge of the sidewalk, the actual concrete sidewalk. If they're stepping on the grass in front of the home that is on the inside of cement towards the home, I would draw, that would be my line of enforcement. As far as the easements go, I think it's reasonable to say that, yeah, a utility company has an easement there, but they don't. And I would definitely enforce a trespass order or anything like that on the grass side or the front yard side of a sidewalk cement edge.
Well, on the one hand, I'm a little bit bothered by shifting the burden from the person being picketed to the neighbors of the person being picketed. But if there's a true situation and we didn't have this kind of an ordinance, they'd probably be in front of both anyway. And so I think you said you'd rather have it. I think this is probably an improvement, even though there's things that are bothersome. So it's kind of where I sit.
Well, I think it'd be a tool that we could use. It may not answer the situation completely. I would think that most people, the reason why they show up at someone's house is they want to be seen by that person in front of their house. And if they're not allowed to do that, it could be a chilling effect on them as far as whether or not they're going to stand in front of a neighbor's house. But I agree, it's any way you look at it, though, it's going to impact a neighborhood.
So you say the 100 feet makes enforcement of the situation easier. Can you explain to me how you would approach that? How would you use that 100 feet that would make this an easier situation for you to?
Well, if we did have a situation going on, and especially if we had some forewarning, you could actually measure out the distance that we're talking about and even make some kind of a marking, a yellow paint line on the sidewalk, something that clearly delineates where that 100 feet is. And you could let people know that hey, this is the line. You know, you can't stop someone from walking if they're just walking by. But if they're stopping and loitering and picketing and you know, harassing, I think that's where the ordinance would be able to do something about it. And if we can clearly delineate where that 100-foot line is, that would be helpful.
Do you imagine that you would put police vehicles between the line and the home?
Potentially. A lot of it would depend on how much forewarning we have about a situation and resources available to us. But if we have pre-warning of something that's going to happen, then we would do some pre-planning on it. Some strategic planning, would probably do some intel gathering, trying to figure out what's going to happen and who's going to be there and kind of what to expect. If it's just happens spontaneous and we had no pre-planning, officers are going to show up on scene and they're probably going to park wherever they can park and then just start trying to deal with it there. And that's where you're going to have to be making a judgment as far as where the property line is and where that 100 feet is, and erring on the side of caution to where you're not inappropriately enforcing the law.
I think that's where you slip over into the difference between law enforcement and peace officer. And that I would hope that should a situation like that come up, that we err on the side of keeping the peace and not necessarily the law enforcement from that perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the goal would not be to issue citations and arrest people. The goal would be to keep the peace. Yeah, for sure.
Well, and I do think if someone is upset with someone in their driveway, if those people come or go, they're going to confront them, but they're not going to do that to a neighbor because that's not where their anger or their frustration is. So yes, we are putting a little bit on the neighbor, but it probably is not the same as if they were allowed right in the driveway or the front of the house of whoever they're upset with. By moving them out a little bit, they're not going to probably holler at the neighbors that are pulling in or out, or their neighbors' children. Hopefully.
So Lisa, I've appreciated hearing the chief's opinion on his preference to have this kind of law on the books. Can you give me your legal opinion about if you have a preference or not, whether or not to have a law like this on the book?
I don't have a preference.
And because it's been tested for you, it's just a matter of risk to the city. And you're saying your evaluation is this ordinance as written would not be a legal risk to the city.
I don't think so. In my research, it appeared that the Salt Lake City ordinance had been challenged, and that the court upheld the ordinance as well. So I don't have a concern with it. I guess if I were going to err on the side, it's just whether you want to regulate this type of activity. And I guess I do think that it's helpful for people. I mean, from what I read about residential picketing or targeted picketing, that, it's important to keep that word targeted residential picketing, is that it's someone's home and it is very threatening. And so in that sense, I agree with Councilwoman Meekham's comment that it feels very different for the neighbor having people protest than having angry people right in front of your own home. And this ordinance would protect that.
My hope is we'd never need it. Like I was saying, I'd like to have it on the books so that should we need it, it can be taken care of. I personally do not understand what creates the entitlement to want to march into a residential neighborhood and intimidate somebody at their home versus going to their place of business. If they're a government official, going to that location where they it's more appropriate. I just don't understand why anyone who would want the same protections would believe they should be able to go out and do the same to another individual. So is it ideal for the legal sustainability of what the Supreme Court's already upheld? I would say yes. Is it the best ordinance we could have given the degradation of decorum that's happened in protesting? Probably not, but I'll take the available tool and hopefully we never use it. So on that, I'm going to motion that we adopt ordinance 2021-01, targeted residential picketing.
Do we have a second?
I would second that.
We have a motion, a second. Do we have further discussion or debate? If done, then I will do a roll call vote. Councilwoman Fillmore.
Aye.
Councilman Ince.
Aye.
Councilwoman Ivy.
Aye.
Councilwoman Meekum.
Aye.
And Councilman McEwen.
Aye.
That motion passes 5-0. Thank you. All right, let's go to item number 3. This is quarterly financial report. We have Marcus Arbuckle here to go over that. Marcus, welcome. Happy New Year to you. It's good to see you in 2021.
Yep.
Well,
yeah, doing well.
Good.
Yeah, thank you. I think Jeanette was going to put it up on the screen so everyone could see the report. But we are already 50% done with the year. First, I wanted to look at the cash position by fund. I always like to compare the current month with the prior year month. So look at December 19 compared to December 20. And I'll just kind of go over a few of the funds that changed significantly. The general fund is up about 2 million compared to where it was in December of last year. And it's kind of combination of several things. Part of it was, towards the end of 2020, fiscal year 2020 with the COVID-19, there's a lot of uncertainty. And so the city was more conservative on the spending. but the sales tax revenue kind of unexpectedly continued to come in at a pretty high rate. So that factored into the increase. And then the city received a substantial amount related to that the CARES money. And so that's the majority of the increase. Another small part of it is the budgeted admin fee revenue is up about 200,000 compared to prior year. And that admin fee just comes from utility funds and other funds that use resources of the general fund. So that's why that general fund cash is significantly higher. The RDA fund cash is lower by 300 and some odd thousand. And that's because of a budgeted transfer that was just made from the RDA fund over to the Parks Fund. The RDA tax increment will come in March and April, and so that's when that revenue will hit that fund. The park fund, the cash is up there, but that's just due to that transfer from the RDA fund. And then the water fund's a little bit low, but that's because of some construction projects with that 400 East was one of the big ones. And then the same thing with the drainage fund. It's down about 700,000, but it's because of large capital projects in fiscal year 21. But I guess overall, I could say cash is up about 1.2 million due to the reasons we talked about. And the PTIF interest rates gone from some 2.5% or so down to 0.5%. So that's continued to decrease. But any questions about the cash balances? Okay, let's go down to the next page. So this is just the restrictions on cash, and the only thing that really jumps out is the RDA fund is low because of that transfer to the Parks Fund, but we weren't worried about it because that cash will come in when the tax increment comes in a couple months. So let's go down to the next page. All right, so the general fund, overall, we are at, let's see, 58% on the revenue. The areas that are high, I mean, property tax is about 32,000 higher than it was last year at this time. Sales tax is about 180,000 higher than it was at the same time last year. The big increase is on line 11, the intergovernmental revenue. That's about 900,000 higher than prior year, but that's because of that CARES money. And then the line 12, the charges for service is up about 200,000 for those admin charges from other funds. And the fines and forfeitures about, I think it was about 80,000 compared to prior year. But overall revenue's up compared to prior year, and we're at 58% on the budget. So things are looking good for the general fund. The expenditure side, we're at 45%. So scanning through the different departments, I'm not really concerned about any of them. I mean, some of them are slightly above the 50%. Overall, in the general fund, the net revenues over the expenditures is almost $1.4 million. But any questions about the general fund? Okay. So next page, look at the RDA fund. Most of the revenue will come in March and April, so not a whole lot of revenue there yet. On the expenditures, there's just the normal contractual obligations, admin charges, and then there's a little over 100,000 of theater reserve eligible expenditures that come out of that theater reserve, out of that cash for the theater reserve fund. And then the transfers are transfers to the Utopia fund and to that parks, that 350,000 parks transfer that we talked about. Now, recreation, there's a little bit of baseball revenue and some transfers from the general fund. And then the expenditures are just some wages and some costs related to the baseball program. RAP tax is, that fund's at 76% on the budget. The RAP tax revenue is about 16,000 higher than it was at the same time last year. The expenditures are also higher, but that's just a factor of how much revenue, how much RAP tax comes in. So if the RAP tax is higher than budget, then the expenditure is going to be higher as well. The Cemetery Perpetual Care Fund is about a little over 17 that's come in for perpetual care revenue. 24,000 was spent on a vehicle for the cemetery. And debt service fund, just there was an interest payment made. So we just transferred the money to cover that interest payment. And then if we go down to the next page, there's the Park Improvement Fund. Revenue is at 84%, but that 100% of the transfer was made already. And the RAP tax and impact fee is at 80%, so it's higher than budget. On the expenditure side, there's that house that was purchased on the half acre, and then there's some expenditures with the Island View project to finish that project up. In the transportation fund, the revenue's at 62%. Overall, it's slightly under where it was last year, but it's pretty comparable. The expenditures are, majority of them are related to the 400 East project and then the slurry seal project. And that budget's at 95% on the expenditure side because some of the slurry seal projects weren't done in fiscal 20, they're pushed into fiscal 21. And so this is one fund that will have to be amended on the budget side. And so we'll have to look at that over the next couple months. Then the Utopia Fund, that's right on target. Just we transfer money into that fund and then it gets paid out. So nothing out of the ordinary there. The water fund's on target as well. I mean, revenue's at 49%, expenditures 51%, so it's looking pretty good. Overall, the sanitation fund is also right on target, nothing out of the ordinary there. And we'll go down to the drainage fund. Drainage fund's on target on the revenue side. It's high on the expenditure side at 89%, but that's because of that 400 East project. This is another fund probably have to look at to possibly do a budget amendment later in the year. And then the telecom fund is on target, nothing out of the ordinary there. And the Whitaker fund is just a transfer out to close that fund out. And all the expenditures for that are now being tracked as a department in the general fund. But any questions about any of this or anything we want to look into a little bit more?
But thanks for explaining it. We appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem.
Sorry, it's muted. Marcus, thank you. No further questions from Marcus then? Thanks for all your work on that. Thanks for taking the time tonight to present to us.
All right, well, thank you.
All right, let's go to item number 4 on the agenda. This is the extension of emergency paid sick leave under Families First Coronavirus Response Act. Brent, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. December 31st, the 80 hours that was allotted to employees if they were to, asked to be isolated or had COVID had expired. That was a benefit that was afforded to employees with the CARES Act back in March. So it did expire on December 31st, and staff's proposal is to as an employer, we can extend those benefits if we so choose. And we've had a couple of employees. We have 2 employees out right now. And honestly, I don't necessarily want to punish employees for getting COVID or being asked to isolate to keep our other employees safe. It's minimally used benefit. We do have some restrictions on how to use the benefit. You have to have documentation from a doctor stating you have COVID or been asked to quarantine or isolate to qualify for the 80 hours. But ultimately, our employees have been pretty great. They've been working from home for the most part, and they haven't had to use these 80 hours as much as we think. So ultimately, what we want to do is staff propose having this benefit for our employees. Politics might change. I believe President-elect Biden has a plan in place that would continue these benefits as well. But until that passes, we'd like to have this as a stopgap and a benefit for employees. Again, it's documented. If you want to have access to it, it's documented. Once you use up the 80 hours and either you're asked to isolate or quarantine again, you need to use your vacation or all-purpose leave. But anyway, this is just a small benefit we'd like to propose and continue for our employees. Any questions? Okay, great. Thank you.
Well, no
Motion?
questions. We have a resolution in front of us. We have a motion.
I'd make a motion that we approve Resolution 2021-03 as presented.
Second.
Motion is second. Further discussion? If not, let's vote. Councilman Ince,
Aye.
Councilman McEwen,
Aye.
Councilwoman Ivy,
Aye.
Councilwoman Fillmore,
Aye.
and Councilwoman Meekum.
Aye.
That motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Thank you, Brett, for presenting. The next item is the recording secretary agreements amendments. And Lisa, you want to talk to us about that?
Yes, I'll try to keep this brief. We've just had a request from one of our recording secretaries to give them 1 extra day to prepare the minutes. Right now, the contracts say that it will be counted. They have to provide us the minutes 5 calendar days, which actually ends up on a Sunday. And she would, for city council meeting minutes. And Katie has just asked if we can say 4 business days, which would be on Monday. We are obligated to get the minutes out and done as soon as possible, but this request, I think, is something that we can accommodate. And so I just wanted to bring that to the council and help out our recording secretaries that we're very grateful for. So staff recommends these 2 amended recording secretary agreements.
I would make a motion to approve the amended recording secretary agreements as presented.
I would second that.
We have motion and a second. Any further discussion? I'll just do a roll call vote. Councilwoman Fillmore.
Aye.
Councilwoman Meekum.
Aye.
Councilman Ince.
Aye.
Councilman McEwen.
Aye.
And Councilwoman Ivy.
Aye.
That motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Let's go to item number 6. This is summary action. We have a couple vehicle purchases. We got a snowplow and we have a water truck. We have staff here for any questions that you might have on these. It looks like we have Mark available to us and Kevin. Any questions for either of these purchases?
Nope.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve the summary action calendar?
I'm sorry, I did have one question. What's the turnaround time on the vehicles?
Mark or Kevin, either one of you know?
Turnaround time on the truck we're looking to purchase is 90 days for the cabin chassis, and then we're probably another 90 days for the body build.
Mike, you have anything to add? Sorry, I didn't see that you were on.
Well, that's okay. I'm in a faraway place. The only thing we have with the water truck is we've got one that's a older model, which is still brand new. But if we wait much longer, we're gonna have to go out and get a 2022, I believe. So, or the next year's model. So we just kind of wanted to jump on that and try to save some money. And they're actually holding the truck for us till tomorrow. If we get approval, then we can move forward with it. So turnaround's fast on this one.
And will you keep
Welcome,
both?
So you guys, I guess we recently have approved hiring another water department guy, so that leaves us a truck short. So me and Dave Walker are going to be looking at a change out program. I've got a couple ideas that I want to develop, and the bottom, real short synopsis is I want to have one utility truck, and then I want to have pickup trucks that we can sell more frequently. I can't remember. I think it was 20. Mark can correct me if I'm wrong, but what did we get out of that truck, Mark? The one we just traded in?
The one we just sold on public auction,
Right.
we got 25,600.
Okay, I was going to be real close. But I'm thinking I want to work out a plan where we can rotate these trucks down to where it keeps the cost minimal to the city. And we still got to develop this part. We're going to try to have part of that ready for this budget year. But for sure, next budget year, we'll have that in place of what we want to recommend. We'll work it through Brent and everybody. But it's, kind of going to be, we're going to go to pickups that we can get rid of fast and easy and get a high dollar volume out of them. And then we'll have one big water leak truck, basically, or maintenance truck that whenever they have it, it has all the tools on it. And we keep a vehicle like that to where it's not out on the road all day long. And we have more fuel efficient vehicles. That's kind of the direction that I want to go. Me and Dave hasn't had much of a chance to talk about it yet, but that's kind of what my goal is with the water truck. Mark's is a little bit different animal, and I'd kind of like to look at that a little bit too before too long.
I would make a motion to approve the items on the summary action calendar as presented.
I'd second that.
Got a motion, a second. Let's do a vote on this. Councilwoman Ivy,
Aye.
Councilman McEwen,
Aye.
Councilman Ince,
Aye.
Councilwoman Meekum,
Aye.
and Councilwoman Fillmore.
Aye.
That motion passes 5-0. Mark, Mike, thanks for being with us. Thanks for answering those questions for us.
Thank you, guys.
All right, let's go to item number 7. This is the minute reviews and acceptance. We have 3 meetings to review. We have the January 5th City Council work session, the January 5th City Council minutes, and the January 5th RDA minutes. Wait, don't we have to go to RDA to approve RDA minutes? So we only have 2, I guess, to approve here. So we have the January 5th City Council work session and January 5th City Council minutes. Motion, do we have any changes to those minutes that anyone noticed?
Motion to accept the minutes as recorded, minus the RDA minutes.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Can we do an RDA meeting another time and approve those? Let's go. We'll go that direction. Okay. Is that okay, Brent? You popped on the screen.
Yes, we need to have an RDA in the next meeting or two to discuss an agreement. So yes, we'll have an upcoming RDA meeting in the next month or so.
Okay, get those minutes on there. Thank you. City Council report. It's Council Member Ince's turn today if he has anything.
Well, December was quiet with regard to meetings. We did have a little bit of a potential emergency the last 24 hours with the forecasted windstorm. We had communication with all of the districts in the city ahead of time so that they were communicating it to their residents. Hopefully everyone heard about it. And then today, after things had started settling down a little bit late morning, we canvassed the city looking for damage and really pretty much dodged the bullet this time as compared to where we've been. Well, it's compared to where we were in September. There were some trees down. A couple of officers had to move a tree off of 4th East that was down. There was one up in my area that was pretty good size that probably should have fallen in September, but didn't. The tree board is going to have its first meeting in several months. And we are meeting again tomorrow night and hopefully get that up and going again. And that's all I have tonight.
Thank you, Councilman. It's perfect lead into, unless anybody has any question for Councilman Ince. Perfect lead into my report. First item on my report, a week ago, I had a meeting of the fire district. It was pretty straightforward meeting. We just reviewed the financial statements, but we did swear in the new assistant fire chief. We're only having COVID meetings every other week now, and the report that we go over, Brent is very good about sending that report to all of you. So you see those numbers. I would state that Brian Hatch, they get out all vaccinations that they receive every week. And they're able to do it through their existing staff. As they receive more vaccinations, they may have to hire more people. And I may have told you that before 2 weeks ago. We had 2 DARE graduations last week. I had one on Wednesday morning and Thursday morning. Holly Coombs, Officer Coombs, we did a reading in Centerville Elementary, and she had I guess had them as they were taught in the lunchroom as she was teaching over the last few weeks. We did the graduation in the school. Just the chief and I were there with Holly, and as she would normally have them set up, and parents gathered in by Zoom. That's still a wonderful program. I think it's you see a lot of enthusiasm from the kids, the elementary school kids, and of course it's more than just the drug and alcohol now. It's just handling life's pressures along those lines as well too. But so that was good to meet with them again. That's always good to see the enthusiasm of our children in our community and future leaders of our community, and just their yearn to learn and just soak in information. Of course, Randy Randall retired. They had a little get together on Friday afternoon, and then they also did a drive-by on Saturday by his father's gas station, and we sure appreciate all his years of service. And Brent has gone over with you, and I don't know if he'll touch on that again, what our plan is for replacement there. The foundation had a meeting, and they talked a lot about pickleball courts. They brought in some of the Parks and Rec committee. The foundation is committing to raise $100,000 for, and then we could get that with some matching funds. That will require, that won't get all the funds we need, but it will make some good chunks. So you'll be hearing further on that. And then the residents of the mobile home park continue to move. They're down to just a half a dozen or so. And the neighbors have been very great at helping them out, both immediate neighbors and people throughout the community. And I've talked with the LDS bishop of that ward, and there's been much help given, both physical labor and financial help through donations and offerings. And then kind of tying in with what Bill just brought up with the tree board and the foundation meeting, I spent a week ago today, probably most of my day till about 2, 3 in the afternoon, starting at 9 in the morning, phoning various committee members of our various committees. And I would just encourage each one of you that, over your committees, that you get them up and going and get them excited again. That they're still all engaged. They realize the tough times we've been through, but they're anxious and ready to be doing things, even if we just are having Zoom meetings. And along those lines, what got me calling was because we had a number of people that I need to replace. We've had 2 trail committee members move out of the city, and then one that some months ago that asked to be replaced. So I got 3 names there that I've interviewed and talked with those people. I'll get you their information and for your approval in 2 weeks. But I did talk to 4 existing members that I asked to re-up in these committees. We need the strength and leadership of these members. We have Nancy Smith and Spence Packer of the Whitaker Museum, and we have John Ruedas and Melissa Larson of the Parks and Rec Committee. And I can't recall when they're re-upping, if I bring that to you or not, but I guess I'm bringing that to you for the re-upping of those 4 committee members.
I would motion that we give advice and consent to the mayor for the reappointment of the 4 members discussed.
We have a second?
Yeah, if I can get myself unmuted, I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So I just encourage you, and I'll get that to Parks and Rec or the Trails Committee, Councilman McEwen. We'll get a couple of new members in there for you. Like I said, we had Jake Layton and move out of the city, and Sonny Larson is going to be moving out of the city as well too, if it appears. So got a couple of new replacements there for you. So thank you everybody for all you're doing. We will, the legislative session started today, so there'll be 3 of us doing LPC meetings every Monday at noon over the length of the session, and so we'll be bringing you information from that as well too. I think I've covered everything. It was a busy last week was quite busy, and so any questions for me? Well, thank you for all you're doing, and we will move to the city manager's report.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I have 5 items I want to bring up. It's like having a whole nother city council meeting. These are just more informative, but we'll have discussions. We're giving you an update on future items that will be coming your way. The first I want to talk about, Chief Child and I will be attending a meeting next week with the new law in place from the state legislature. They're looking at consolidating dispatch centers, the dispatch. So we'll be having a meeting with the other cities discussing a consolidated virtual dispatch here in Davis County. It'll be an interesting idea. Not quite sure what that really means and how the dispatch centers are going to coordinate and cooperate. But it's actually a huge need when you particularly look at paramedic services. There's no communication on where the nearest ambulance might be. Those type of items could be rectified with this consideration. So I'll update you. Chief and I will update you on those conversations to make sure you're fully aware of what's going on there. I've brought this. The second item I have is the paramedic services throughout the county. I've brought this up briefly in the past. There's discussion of moving the paramedic services from the county to respective cities, or in our case, South Davis Metro. Just, it doesn't impact us as much. We've already done the consolidation. We're actually kind of the example for the rest of the county on how the 5 cities were able to get together and consolidate our resources and and be far more efficient. So, but we are involved in the conversations, all 5 of us city managers down here. The conversation that's occurring right now that you need to be aware of is a possible property tax increase from South Davis Fire to make up that difference in providing those services. The county has been providing the services at a heck of a discount to the property tax, the resident in the community, but it's been subsidized by the general fund, and there hasn't been any property tax increase on paramedic services. So there's definitely a shortfall as they transition from the county to the cities, or in our cases, the district. Then they'll need to be made up some funds there, and you'll see property tax increases throughout the county to make up that difference. So this requires a far more involved conversation with all of you. And so this will be a future agenda item to really go into the specifics of what that means and how it impacts Centerville City residents. I'll answer any questions, brief questions, if you have any on that right now.
Does the amount that's currently given to the county for paramedics transfer to the district as the responsibility shifts?
So from what I understand, the original plan is for a property tax increase possibly to occur. Again, I don't know, there's still conversations prior to being handed over but the county will eliminate their property tax, and then the cities will increase their property taxes to make up that difference. So, but what we are finding out is South Davis, in all honesty, has been essentially subsidizing the rest of the county because of our property values are higher in South Davis County. And so our property tax increases will be not as great as those northern cities, which is something we knew all along, but Curtis at the county has done a phenomenal job breaking this down so all of us can understand where each one of our cities play a role into the county paramedics. So ultimately, paramedic services level of service will drastically increase, and we're really excited about that. But again, our level of service here in the county is we're already doing a great job. So
when you say the level of service is increasing, we're not increasing number of ambulances, are we?
There'll be an increase in number of ambulances throughout the county, and how we play a role in that. That's what's being discussed. So,
where we house them? Aren't we pretty full in our buildings already?
Yeah, so the complication, again, I don't want to go into too much in detail right now, but the complication is you have Layton Fire. Do they participate with North Davis Fire, or where does South Weaver Fire play a role? And so you've got these different entities trying to figure out how to play along and who gets what. We don't have to play that game, so we're pretty fortunate.
Brent, do you have visibility to what the average hourly wage is for one of our paramedics in South Davis?
That's been brought up in the conversations, but no, I don't have that in front of me.
The context behind that question is I recently learned that up in Logan, most paramedics are making less than you can make it In-N-Out Burger. And I think people who are making life and death decisions for members of the public should be compensated. So hopefully we don't have any of our paramedics on a subsistence wage or doing 2 jobs because they can't feed their families on what we're paying them on their primary position.
I do know, as the administrative board and mayor can attest to their board, that they just recently did a compensation study. We're trying to be more competitive, particularly here in South Davis.
Yes.
Okay, before we go too much in more conversation, we'll bring that up. I'll probably invite the chief to also present that because he'll be able to have a lot more insight into how that impacts South Davis. So I'll invite the chief to that as well.
And
the item I have is we're discussing truth taxation and other items. Last year we had discussed with you all that there's a possibility of a need of a water rate increase. We are at that time where we're looking for capital improvement projects, particularly the reservoir, the tank, particularly some pumps. And also we've seen a 50% increase in our Weaver Basin water from $80,000 to $120,000 a year, that we might need to start considering a water rate increase. And I'll have a presentation. I don't want you to be caught off guard. So I'm just giving you now so you get a heads up that we'll have an agenda item in the near future of what that means and what kind of equipment and capital improvement that projects we're talking about.
Go bond. People are just going to love us if we, after our 30%, do it again to them.
So that's where, again, the truth and taxation conversation, again, I'll just prelude it if we were going to discuss that today, I was going to bring up the water rate increase as, again, balancing those priorities that we'll need to do as we move forward. Number 4, if there are any questions on the Public Works recruitment, I'm not going to go into detail. I've sent you on email. Is there any questions on the Public Works recruitment for me at this time or clarifications? Are we okay with how we're proceeding? I didn't receive any nasty emails, so that was good. And then lastly, I was just informed today that we're losing 2 employees, one out of the streets department, Austin Thompson, which will be a great loss because Austin is a hard worker. He's really good at what he does. So that's unfortunate. We'll lose him in 2 weeks. And finally, one it's also challenging is Kimber. It will be retiring and leaving the city. So to see either one of them, wish them luck, and we appreciate all they've done. And we'll start the recruitment for those 2 positions, but big holes to fill at this point. Just giving you a heads up. Any questions for me? Great. Thank you very much for the conversation at the cemetery. I think that was very helpful as I'm looking into all the discussions that have occurred over the last 20 to 30 years. The situation we're in now and the feelings we have are no different than I suspect they felt 30 years ago, to be honest with you. This is a tough subject, and I think this council will be able to find the best direction to move forward. With that, I don't have anything else, Mayor. Thank you.
Thanks. Well, everyone, do I have any other items to bring up, or do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Have a great week.
Aye.
Be safe. Thank you, everyone.
See you guys.
Good night.